At the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to senior police detective Lars as he goes with his wife Marie to buy an expensive apartment on the beach in Oslo. As the couple proceeds to leave their new house, Lars is called away at a reported strange sighting. Lars hurries to the other side of the beach and learns that a group of people speaking in a strange language have been discovered. A few hours later, Lars learns that the people are speaking Old Norse and claim to be from the past. Lars proceeds to arrange a psychiatric evaluation for the group, but learns from the news that people from the past have been washing up on shore in multiple areas of the world. A few years later, new arrivals from past eras continue, and the Norwegian society has adapted to living with the time migrants. Unfortunately, Lars is divorced and shares custody of his teenage daughter Ingrid with Marie, who is married to a man named Gregers from the late 19th century. One day, Lars is called to investigate the body of a female time traveler found on the shore. Lars notices strange marks on the victim's trunk and tries to work out what it could be. Later that day, Lars is partnered with a rookie time migrant police recruit named Alfhildr. The two start their investigation and find a woman who saw the victim in the water. The woman describes that the victim was fighting with the green-eyed sea monster Hafgufa. Alfhildr believes the woman and starts researching the monster, while Lars encourages his partner to present her research to her colleagues who make fun of her. Alfhildr is discouraged and angry with Lars for setting her up. Then she sees a time migrant man on social media and recognizes him. She tracks the man, follows him to a restaurant, and assaults him for raping her when she was 10 years old. Lars, who was following Alfhildr, hoping to apologize, sees her beating up the man and breaks the fight. Lars then threatens to report Alfhildr for police brutality, but is shocked when she tells him that she knows about his temproxate eye drops addiction, which he buys from his time migrant neighbor Nabo. Meanwhile, Marie and Gregers prohibit Ingrid from going to a Roosfering celebration with her friends by blocking her bank account so she couldn't pay. Ingrid vents to Lars about what happened, and Lars offers to pay for her. Lars and Alfhildr call a truce and start working on the investigation together. Elsewhere, two men named Getty and Vend are seen trapping time migrant women out of the water in a fishing trawl bag. The beginning of the episode is set in 1031 AD, and shield maiden Alfhildr goes around searching for her commander, Tore Hund. In the present time, Lars studies the sea monster Hafgufa and finds that it looks a lot like a fishing trawl bag. Lars discusses this with Alfhildr and tells her to search the Coastal Administration database for sales of fishing trawl bags and similar fishing equipment and find buyers that aren't in the fishing industry. Elsewhere, a time migrant named Nevien asks his subordinates Getty and Vend to work for a security company called Magnon Security about the murdered beforeigner, and hoping to stay low, orders the men to return and hide all of the women they trapped, at least until the heat dies down. Marie and Gregers show up at Lars' job, admonish him for paying for Ingrid behind their back, and demand they all go see a family therapist to handle parenting better. Alfhildr searches the database and finds that a security company called Magnon Security has been in the market for fishing trawl bags. Then Alfhildr gets a message from an old Viking friend called Urud at her work. Shocked, she goes to visit Urud and finds that she has been arrested. Alfhildr helps out Urud for old time's sake, as they were acquaintances as shield maidens in their previous life, and makes sure the charges are dropped. The two friends go out that night to celebrate, and Alfhildr sees the Magnon security van and takes a picture of it together with Getty and Vend. Getty and Vend visit a brothel owner named Holger and take all the time migrant women they sold him, as per Navin's orders. Nabo and his young son visit Lars at his house one night. Nabo and Lars get to know each other better, and Nabo shares that he lost his wife while they were time migrating and shows him a family tattoo. The next morning, Alfhildr presents to the police squad her findings and suspicions about Magnon Security, and she and Lars are sent to track down the suspects. Holger goes to see Navin at his house, and the two get into an argument about the woman Navin attacks Holger. Meanwhile, Lars and Alfhildr track Getty and Vedi to an abandoned house by the beach and rescue many time migrant women held against their will. Lars finds a woman with a similar tattoo, as Nabo recognizes it and reunites her with Nabo and her son. Lars interrogates Gideon, but he refuses to cooperate. Lars and Alfhildr go through surveillance tapes from the Coast Guard from the night of the victim's arrival, and are shocked to see her walking around in this period, hours before she supposedly time migrated. At the beginning of the episode, a prehistoric man named Skjalg recognizes a delivery man named Tommy as his commander Tora Hund from old times. Tommy has lost his memory and doesn't remember anything at all. Lars and Alfhildr are shocked to learn that the victim is actually from the current period and was posing as a time migrant. So they visit a transtemporal center and meet with its director, who tells them she doesn't know the victim. Meanwhile, one of the center's employees, Ada, steals the officer's laptop and copies the contents. The police track Holger down as he prepares to disappear and question him. The terrified Holger inadvertently gives them Navin's name. Alfhildr accidentally shoots Lars in the leg, and he is put in a leg splint. Urud is diagnosed with cancer but refuses treatment. Then she runs into Skjalg, who informs her about Tore. Alfhildr takes Lars home from the hospital and volunteers to cook dinner for him and Ingrid. After the dinner, Alfhildr meets with Urud and is informed of Tore. The Shield Maidens track Tor to his house and watch him as he interacts with his wife and daughter. They then confront him and demand him to remember that he's the great warrior Tore who destroyed Olaf the Stout. But Tommy fails to remember anything. Urud shares the news of her diagnosis with Alfhildr, who encourages her to get the treatment. Then Alfhildr and Lars visit Navin at his house and ask him about his role in the Magnon security company. Navin denies having any association. Later that night, Ada visits Navin at his house, subdues him, and asks him to give her information about the victim. The interaction is interrupted by Navin's wife, and Ada disappears, warning him to be ready with the information next time. Tommy is attacked by Olaf's men, but manages to fight back and subdue them. He then asks Urud and Alfhildr to remind him about Tore. A man comes into the police station and tells Lars and Alfhildr that the victim was his client at his makeup studio, and that a man named Navin was calling and asking peculiar questions about her. Navin is shot and killed by a drone while he's out hunting. Ingrid, her best friend Maddie, and their friends hang out on a boat and play around pretending to be time migrants. Maddie goes in for a swim and disappears. Moments later, Maddie reappears as a real-time migrant, joined by a group of other real-time migrants. The police are called, and the girls are put in quarantine for having come in contact with time migrants. Lars is notified about Ingrid's situation, while he, Alfhildr, and the rest of the squad visit the newly discovered body of Navin. Lars puts Alfhildr in charge of finding the original crime scene and other evidence and rushes to his daughter. At the quarantine center, Lars is met by Gregors and the rest of the parents. Maddie discreetly sees Ingrid and tells her that she feels different and that her teeth are rotten. Ingrid is discharged after a couple of days, and Lars and Gregors take her home and the men get to know each other better. Meanwhile, Alfhildr tries to organize a police search but can't find available personnel, so she takes Urud and her prehistoric friends to the scene and uses primitive methods to find the original crime scene and spent bullets. The bullets are examined and discovered that Navian was killed by a military drone. The police narrow down the few people trained to operate such machines and discover that Ada is one of them. Ada has Maddie's files stolen and learns that Maddie has a temporal anomaly. Maddie starts to have prehistoric visions. At the beginning of the episode, Tommy is recognized as Tore and fired from his job. People gather around Tor's house to show their opposition and make his life difficult. Lars and Alfhildr go to see Madeline and find her speaking the Old Norse language. Alfhildr recognizes it and tries to speak to her, but Maddie can only repeat numbers. Then Lars and Alfhildr update the squad on their suspicion of Ada and search to locate her. Their search leads them to a warehouse Ada has rented. Alfhildr gets a call from Urud informing her that Tore has entered into a dangerous underground fight to raise money for his family and asks her to go support him. Alfhildr excuses herself from her duties and rushes to Tore, leaving behind Lars to go through Ada's warehouse on his own. Lars goes through everything and finds numbers on a piece of paper and takes it to study. Elsewhere, Ada escapes from the warehouse and runs through the woods. After a while, she reaches a farmhouse and is welcomed by the owner. After being severely beaten up, Tor manages to win the fight and celebrates separates with his wife to the dismay of Urud, who was once his partner. Back at the police station, temproxate is found in Alfhildr's police car, and she's put under investigation, which she goes along with, trying to cover for Lars. However, when Lars finds out that Alfhildr is being investigated, he confesses about the illegal eye drops and hands in his resignation, which devastates Alfhildr. Trying to take her mind off what's going on, Alfhildr goes on a date with a harbor cop named Jeppe, and they get intimate. Later, Jeppe is seen plucking a strand of Alfhildr's hair and putting it in a plastic bag. Meanwhile, Lars returns home to find a strange time migrant man studying his caseboard. The man tells him that he was one of the first time migrants and reminds Lars that he rescued him from the water. The man offers his help and shares that the strange numbers Lars found in Ada's warehouse are a GPS location. Lars searches this locations and learns that it leads to a time hole. The man tells Lars that the victim, Ada, Madeline, and every strange thing that's been happening leads to this place. At the beginning of the episode, a new Viking time migrant man asks for a phone and calls Maddie. Lars continues his investigation and, together with his new friend, finds the modern-day picture of the first time temporal victim. As he no longer works at the station, he shares the information with Alfhildr, who presents it to the rest of the squad so that they can search for the identity of the woman. Lars shares with Alfhildr the description of the man who helped him. Alfhildr checks the database and finds that the man has been dead for 2 years. Alfhildr then organizes an intervention for Lars with Ingrid and Nabu, asking him to stop the temproxate, which is seemingly causing him hallucinations. Lars has a hard time being sober. One day, Lars learns that Jeppe and his partner David have gone to school looking for Madeline and becomes suspicious. He presents his suspicions to Alfhildr, who finds bite marks on Jeppe's body. Lars and Alfhildr test remnants of the bite in the victim's mouth against Jeppe's semen and conclude that he was the killer. Jeppe and David confess and are charged with forcing women into prostitution. However, Lars still believes there's something more to the case. The new picture of the victim gets a hit, and she's identified as Mariana. Tora celebrates Migration Day and invites Urud and Alfhildr. There, Urud notices a man attempting to shoot Tore and jumps in front of him, shielding him while being fatally shot. Alfhildr is devastated, and a Shield Maiden memorial is held for Urud. Meanwhile, Lars gets abducted by Ada, who tells him that she, Mariana, and their friends had found out that the government was planning to do illegal testing on the new arrivals, and so had gone to the time hole, pretending to be time migrants. Unfortunately, Jeppe and David had informants, discovered this plot, and killed Mariana to keep the secret. She adds that Jeppe and David killed Navin and were framing her for it. Then she gives him a file she compiled so that he can study it thoroughly. Lars returns home and starts going through it. Madeline goes to an old church grounds and digs up the ground to find a sword. She's happy to see Olaf the Stout approaching her on his horse. She gives him the sword and he takes her to join the fight. In 1888, Detective Isaac Joseph investigates Jack the Ripper in England while a couple of girls opt to leave for Norway. In the present day, Alfhildr responds to a body found under a bridge and notes that she was stabbed multiple times. Alfhildr then goes to a sorcerer named Volvo to figure out why she's recently started sleepwalking. Meanwhile, Lars is invited to assist on the case as an external advisor. Lars has substituted his eye drops addiction with pills and, on his day off, goes to Ingrid's dorm to help her set up. There, he meets Olaf, who is upset and vents to his girlfriend Madeline that the government has declined his request to officially be named Olaf. While studying the case, Lars finds striking similarities with old cases in England and invites the English police to come and assist them. Time migrant detective Isaac Joseph and his partner Adepero are sent to Oslo, and after reviewing the case, they confirm that Jack the Ripper is the main suspect. After collecting many files on the disappearing women, Detective Isaac and Adepero are seen hanging out, drinking, and burning their police badges. At the beginning of the episode, Olaf's men steal his son, King Magnus's skull, from his grave and bring it to him, so that Olaf can have it tested against his DNA, prove that he's the king, and get his name. A bloody body part is sent to the editor of the local newspaper, accompanied by a letter. Lars becomes suspicious of the English officers and reaches out to Scotland Yard, who confirms his fear that Isaac and Adepero are imposters. Tore is framed by Olaf for the robbery of King Magnus's grave. Alfhildr tries to help him prove his innocence, Ingrid informs Lars that she's pregnant with one of Olaf's friends named Sturla, Baby, and they go together to inform Marie and Gregors, who freak out to no end. Isaac and Adepero are received by a 19th century time migrant and leader of Neo-Luddites who are an anti-tech society named Dr. And. Olaf meets Volvo and thanks her for her unwavering loyalty. At the beginning of the episode, Volvo tells Olaf that she misinterpreted her prophecy about the woman that can unleash Olaf's powers as being of Maddie when it's actually of Alfhildr. Lars and Alfhildr go to England to get to the bottom of what happened and find out the identities of Isaac and Adepero and learn Isaac's real name is Ben. Ingrid freaks out about what should be her next move with regards to her pregnancy, and after some time decides to get an abortion. However, when she tells Sturla her plan, he threatens her life. Olaf goes to the court and gets permission to have his DNA tested against King Magnus. Lars and Alfhildr work out the location of Dr. An's farm and send the team there to shut down the operation and capture the imposters. Alfhildr interviews Ben, but he gives her nothing useful. She then gets a brain scan for her temporal sleep disorder, and the laboratory technicians are amazed by what they see. To the shock of everyone, John Roberts is seen in the underground train station. At the beginning of the episode, John asks a soothsayer named Rebecca for the location of a young woman. Rebecca goes and calls the young woman to warn her, but John finds out, attacks Rebecca, and takes her phone. Lars and Alfhildr find out that Ben is being extradited to the UK and rush to ask him questions, despite being told to stand down. Ben tells them that he has been looking for John for a long time, and that John can go back in time. Ben adds that he believes John is Jack the Ripper. The bosses find out about the interview, and both Lars and Alfhildr are taken off the case. Alfhildr learns from the laboratory that her hippocampus is big, so her senses are enhanced. Lars attacks Sturla for threatening Ingrid's life. Sturla and his friends respond by attacking Gregors, mistaking him for Lars. The police track Rebecca's phone to a park, but arrive after she's been killed by John. At the beginning of the episode, John goes to see Nessie, a time migrant from the 19th century. Nessie's partner waits for him and tries to attack him, but John kills him and abducts Nessie. Meanwhile, the Scotland Yard police come to Oslo and propose that John and Ben are working together. Alfhildr and Lars don't buy this idea and continue their investigation. Lars admits to Alfhildr that he has restarted the eye drops and asks her to monitor his use. Elsewhere, Olaf and Maddie get into an argument and Olaf dumps her. Alfhildr studies John's lecture about time travel. Lars and Alfhildr dive deep into the investigation and after considering all of the facts, suspect that the British government may be transporting agents back in time for a secret mission. They keep this information themselves as they can't trust anyone. Ingrid takes time out to think about her decision and changes her mind about the abortion. Back at the station, Lars and Alfhildr notice the British officers are acting suspiciously. Then they're called to the scene of Nessie's abduction, and as they go through it, they receive a voice recording from John telling them that he will contact them at midnight. Later that day, John calls and negotiates to exchange one of the British officers, named Henry Black, for Nessie. Elsewhere, Volvo advises the frustrated Olaf to be patient and goes deeper into her vision by trying to find Alfhildr later that day. At midnight, the operation is set and they all wait for John. Henry walks into a nearby tunnel off script and meets John, whom he has worked with before. Elsewhere, Olaf and Volvo drive to the tunnel to see Alfhildr and get in a terrible accident. Henry confronts John about being Jack the Ripper. John confirms and shoots Henry. Alfhildr rushes into the tunnel and finds John preparing to escape. She warns him to stop and proceeds to shoot him, but he's unaffected by the bullets. John then shoots Alfhildr, but she too is unharmed, which surprises John. Then when John and Alfhildr run towards one another, an explosion occurs that rocks the city. At the beginning of the episode, Alex, one of the officers from Lars's squad, takes the day off while the officers involved in the tunnel operation run inside the tunnel to find everything has been damaged in the explosion, so they activate the emergency procedure. Elsewhere, Alfhildr wakes up confused in her trailer. She steps out to go to work and finds that her police car has been replaced by an old car. She gets to work and finds everybody singing. Her boss doesn't recognize her at all and sends her to the cleaner's lounge. Alfhildr is bewildered by what's going on and is relieved to see Alex. Alex seems to be the only person who recognizes her and explains that when she and John collided, a time rift was created, which resulted in an alternative reality. The Queen took advantage of this and made the alternative reality into one that suited her. Alfhildr then learns Olaf has been named the new king with Volvo as his queen by his side. Alex explains that he was able to use technology to manipulate the time rift and stay in his present mind. That night, Alfhildr finds Tor's supporters and hangs out with them. Then she takes them to the Queen's place and creates a commotion, demanding to speak to the Queen. Alfhildr is captured by the royal guards and is taken to see the Queen. She argues with Volvo and declares that she doesn't deserve to be queen. Volvo puts up a strong front and threatens Alfhildr, but later tells Olaf that Alfhildr must be killed. While in captivity, Alfhildr learns from her cellmate that Lars has become the village shaman, so she breaks out of prison and goes to see him. Lars tells her a very cryptic message, emphasizing that one not yet born should not be killed. Alfhildr doesn't get what Lars means, goes to the police station and breaks into a computer to locate John. She finds him taking a cruise on a fishing boat and approaches him. John proposes they should travel back in time and prevent the existence of the human race. Alfhildr refuses and proceeds to fight him, but an unknown force strangles her. Meanwhile, the Queen learns that Alfhildr has escaped and cries, declaring her world has crumbled. The time rift closes, both the King and Queen disappear, and the world resumes from the point of explosion under the tunnel. Lars finds Alfhildr unconscious and takes her to a hospital. She recovers quickly and discusses the case with Lars. Lars informs her that John was found dead and that his body has been sent to England, with everyone concluding that everything that's happened was his fault. Alex has had a stroke and is hospitalized. Alfhildr then hears on the news that both Olaf and Volvo have been killed in a car accident. Lars takes Alfhildr home from the hospital and asks her about the meaning of her name, which means daughter of no one. She then details that Tor had found her alone and crying in the ocean and dressed in modern clothes when she was 4 years old. A few days later, Alfhildr returns to work and finds out that Alex is still in the hospital. Ingrid goes to the hospital for a checkup with her family. Alfhildr discusses with Tor about his case and comes up with an idea to search the evidence collected from Olaf's car crash. There she's astonished to find a crucifix, which she remembers her mother Ingrid giving her. An officer visits Alex and informs him that a DNA analysis has shown that Alfhildr is Lars's granddaughter. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.